Alrighty. So, welcome to those of you who are watching live. We don't do any fancy intros to the lug. If you do want to join, there's a little bit of a process. I don't share the link on Mastodon or on YouTube. If you want to find it, you got to join the Discord to actually know who you are, and then you can find the link in the on the Discord. It's a little bit of a trolling filter, although it won't be as bad as because right now I'm the only mod, but still too many bad experiences. But if you want to join, the link is on the Discord in the LUG chat. You're free to join. If you don't want to even talk, you don't have to. There'll be plenty of people here who stay muted the whole time. That's fine. Or you can just continue to watch the live stream, whatever you wish to do. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So our main topic tonight, although like I said earlier, we'll probably branch off into our usual ramblings, is backup strategies. Either your current backup strategy or the backup strategy you hope to have someday, or your lack of backup strategy. If you're currently like me, who have no backup strategy because I'm in the middle of transitioning things, which just scares the shit out of me. Um, but so that's what we're gonna do. So we're gonna go around the horn first and see if we can't generate some stuff. And because D Dubs, you're right next to me in the chat, you get to go first. What's your backup strategy?
Cool. It's actually split into a couple of different things. There's all the normal files which reside on a RAID that I have external drives. Actually, as I've gotten deals on them, I've bought more. So I have like an external mirror, for example, and I sync it up to that. But I also got a deal on like an 18 terabyte drive, so I have another copy. So I try to have multiple copies of my data. My most critical data is up on the cloud. The stuff that's not massively large, but documents, anything of that sort that are important, tax stuff, whatever. For the VMs, it's a little different because I run Proxmox and I use Proxmox backup server, and that actually backs up also to the NAS, but it also has some local storage. So I've got kind of of sort of a wide variety. And for some of the VMs that I use a lot, I use Pika backup for my home directory. I don't know if you guys ever use that. It's actually really nice. It's a front end to the it's a horrible name, I'm sorry, but Borg, the Borg backup, which is really nice, but it's really hard to use on its own. So Pika makes it really easy. It does dedupe, it does all kinds of things. And dedupe compression indexes, it's easy, it's somewhat transportable. And then what I want to have is a tape backup.
Oh, wow.
And Proxmox actually supports that. Proxmox backup server supports that natively, including basic loader support, which I obviously wouldn't get. But yeah, so then I would actually take the tapes offsite, store them at a friend's house. That's kind of what I do.
I don't know much about tape. I'm assuming that it's very expensive, though, right?
It's not horrible actually. You can get an LTO 4, I think, for I don't know, probably $500 or $600 to be used. The cartridges aren't cheap, but they're not like hundreds and hundreds of dollars. It stores quite a bit of data on it, compressed especially. Um, it's just you also need a good machine for it to run on. Because believe it or not, one of the problems you have with modern tape drives is keeping them fed fast enough. And if you don't, it causes what's known as shoe shining, where the tape has to back up and then go back again and back up. And it just, your tape performance is terrible and it's extra wear. So, yeah, just I'd actually have to build out another machine to be my backup server. Right now, I do it as a VM. That's me.
All right. Drew, what about you? What's your backup strategy or your, wishful one if you have a dream?
Currently I have a TrueNAS scale. I think I've talked about this a lot actually, but I have a TrueNAS scale. I use an N3 case for it, which allows you to have front panel access to 8 drives. And those 8 drives right now, I only have 7, but 5 of them are 16 terabyte drives, and then I have 2 6 terabyte drives, and those work really, really well in terms of um, the network. You know how I back up stuff in using the network. But the one thing I have added is I'm using Proton Mail now, so because I have kicked Google and all of its products to the curb. So I'm using Proton Mail, and with that, I get 500 gigabytes of encrypted data as part of that mail service, and that's really good. But I also just to be clear again, we have I have a Nextcloud instance that uses um, directories and from the TrueNAS scale from TrueNAS scale. So whenever I have something on in my Nextcloud, it automatically gets backed up and replicated to TrueNAS scale simultaneously.
Nice. All right. I'm not sure who wants to go next. So I'm not going to call on people who are muted right now. So if you want to go next, raise your hand. All right, War Thunder, go ahead.
Mine isn't the best in the world, but it's what I have now. So I set up a little micro tower with Debian to run just as a NAS machine. I put a big giant disk array, a TerraMaster external that's twin 12 terabyte drives that are in RAID with each other. And that's my Nextcloud as well. That backs up all my systems to that computer. Currently, right now, I am using my old Synology box because it's kind of underpowered to rsync across the network to that machine, back up to something else. And then I'm manually going up. I have, I think, 3 external drives, like external hard drives. One goes in my fire safe. One I keep at my desk just in case. I've got another one around here somewhere. I'm trying to prep to back up my Jellyfin. So I've got at least hard backups of everything. I do want to do something more with that eventually, but for right now, that seems to work for me. And Nextcloud's great to sync everything between stuff, especially since I started doing some YouTube stuff. Being able just to sync, edit on my laptop, have it just sync to my server, and then sit here, it syncs back down. I do whatever I want with it. It works great.
Nice. Don, go ahead. Don't forget to unmute yourself. Yep, still muted.
Oh, are you talking to me?
Nope.
No.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought. I was like, that's good.
All right, we got 2 Dons. We'll go ahead and move on. Nate, go ahead. Nate, don't forget to mute yourself.
Yeah, I have 2 processes to unmute myself. But anyways, so mine's interesting because I found some Seagate drives, the 12 terabytes for $99. So I bought 2 of those, and those are my main NAS backups. I use TrueNAS for that. That also gets synced to my Mega NZ drive, and I also have an offload server that's actually sitting in the church that I also offload to more 12 terabyte drives too. So I have an offsite backup just in case. And then I have timestamp that I use for all of my Linux distros that I'm actually using hardware for. And then, of course, for my Proxmox server, I use Proxmox backup. It also goes to my Mega NZ drive. So kind of in between.
Nice. All right, Redstone, go ahead.
I use MI tool. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I use 2 4 terabyte drives running in RAID 1 for backupping over the network over 2.5 gigahertz gigabit, and yeah, I basically back up all my software projects and some other critical data, and in future I would like to offload this also to an offsite backup like Proton Mail Drive or something, because it's good to have one. But currently my internet is not the best, so it would take hours to sync it.
Yeah, that bandwidth problem is a big deal. Josh, go ahead. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Okay, so I guess we're talking about backup strategies,
Yep.
right? Okay. So I use good old reliable rsync. It works. Unless I'm like talk about like backing up like constant stuff. So like from my desktop, I actually just use Borg backup, and then that's the only client. That's the only timestamp based backup that I actually use. Everything after the desktop is effectively just operated through 12-hour rsync schedules. So I actually use a 3-hour backup schedule from my desktop to my home server, which then hooks rsync. Well, which then takes a ButterFS snapshot of all the various volumes, which then offloads to my on-site backup server, which and it does that every, I believe it's currently 6 hours right now, and then that server every 12 hours will rebuild an image of the entire database and dump it onto an external drive that every now and then at the end of each month I'll then take that external drive and actually take it to a complete remote location, so I'm not having to transfer over the internet.
That
Because
sounds very Josh of you.
well, so there is a term for like system administrators would use, especially like old school ones. Don't underestimate the bandwidth of a truck going down the highway. We have a lot of data.
Yeah. So my previous backup strategy was not as complicated as yours, Josh, but I used rsync as well, just because it's so easy to do. I mean, it's just just set it up. You can automate it as easy as you can. I also had Borg set up for quite a while, and I still have Borg, some older Borg backups, but I haven't set up since I reinstalled OpenSUSE, which I will do. But I've been, since I set up the home server, I've been very tempted to experiment with other backup technologies. There's quite a few out there that are either rsync based or do other things other than rsync that are more client server related type things, but I haven't really got into them yet, so I don't know how good they are. D-Dubs, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's interesting. I didn't realize you used Borg because, like I mentioned, Pika's there, and so it's compatible with that. So it gives you a really nice front end scheduler, everything else. If you haven't tried it yet.
Yeah, I've used Pika in the past.
Okay.
I use Vorda, or at least I used Vorda now.
How do you like that? I'm curious.
It's not. It's just as good as Pika, I think, but it's more complex. So like, the Pika is much more simple to set up, whereas
Yeah, I like that.
The Vorda is more complex, has more tweaks and stuff, more stuff you can do. It's easier to mount your your backups as a complete image if you want, which is nice. I'm sure you probably can do that with Pika. I never played along with it that much.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, because I know it could access the a Borg database backup database. So
Darcy,
it's never needed to do that.
Yeah, Darcy, go ahead. Don't forget to unmute yourself. No, can't hear you. You're still muted. Yep, there you go. You probably can hear you if you talk. It looks like you're muted now.
We can hear you.
Anyway, definitely heard your keyboard. All right. Anyways, we'll go ahead and move on. And just let everybody know if you say something in chat. I don't usually see it. I don't have it open. So, if anything goes on in there, you guys will have to let me know. Anyways, so yeah, I've used Borg and stuff in the background. Like I said, I'm kind of flirting with some of the other options that are out there. So, one thing that I've kind of considered is talking to some of my, online Linux friends and asking them if they want to do a server swap where we each have a server in each other's houses and we kind of back up to that. I've thought about that, but the bandwidth. Somebody was mentioning the bandwidth thing is the thing that always gets me. Like, I have a ton of data. Like, somebody in the YouTube chat said, "You guys have tons of data." I'm a minimalist. Like, I have a ton of data. Now, granted, most of that stuff, like, if I were to lose, like, the movies or the TV shows or even the stuff from the YouTube channel, it would not be devastating. Like, it's not a big deal. Anything that I truly would be sad if it got lost, like family photos, tax documents, stuff like that. That stuff's backed up in 14 different places. Some of it's in a fire safe lockbox. Some of it is in the cloud. So I'm never going to lose that stuff, which I'm happy about. It's the big ticket items, like the in terms of like huge storage. That's always a big problem. Josh, go ahead.
So the big thing about like that I believe that you could call that co-location when you're working with a buddy on like backing up thing. A lot of people don't realize that the biggest bandwidth tax is actually just the initial sync. So that very first backup run where you're offloading the data off to the offsite. Everything after that, you're depending on like your backup strategy, even if it's just rsync, you're just uploading the differences.
Delta, yeah.
And the biggest drawback to using rsync for this is that depending on the data size, that rsync run can actually take longer to scan the differences between the two data sets than it is to actually do the transfer, which is why rsync is probably not like the greatest solution for like managing a huge backup stack. Especially when we're talking about like hitting somebody else's, backing up to somebody else's personal server. I know that I mentioned that I use rsync, but that's just because my servers at home, they're not really doing a whole lot. And if say like Matt, you're backing up your data to my server, I don't necessarily want you. I don't know. I'm not gonna be able to control how aggressively you push the backups.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I'm not careful about that, you could just be running an hourly rsync task to push the backup, and I have to eat that CPU load or completely block you.
Yeah. What would you think? Would you think, like, just for example, like Borg, would that be a good option, or what do you think would be the best option for something like that?
So if your file system, so like ZFS or ButterFS, can support block level duplication, so like your ZFS send or your ButterFS send, that is actually the simplest solution, or well, the most lightweight solution. And that can actually, and that's just as easy as communicating through an SSH protocol. So it's not particularly difficult to actually set up. Like I believe ButterFS has a couple gotchas compared to ZFS, but that is the lightest load. Other than that, that's when you would look at the clients like Borg, which Borg is amazing. But my issue with Borg is that if the differences in version numbers get a little bit too far, that can actually cause issues with the database. So, like, say, if I'm using a Debian stable server from, like, not the latest Debian stable release, but we'll say that it's using, like, Debian 11, which is still supported, that version of Borg does not work with the same version of Borg that runs off of a Fedora system. Or even just, like, if you're using the Flatpak with your Vorta client, same issue there, because and that's mostly an issue specifically with the Vorta Flatpak client, because Vorta is officially maintained by BoardBase, which is the largest corporate contributor towards the Borg backup project. So obviously, they're always going to ship the latest and greatest version of Borg, because why wouldn't they? And I've had multiple issues with database corruption issues, because well, I'm a savage and I'm not running the same distro across all of my boxes. I apologize.
Gentoo everything.
Working on it.
So I think that one of the things that I want to try. So one of the other things that, like Drew mentioned, he has jettisoned everything in terms of Google. I've also tried to do some of that. Now I know I'm never going to be able to go the full way, but I've also set up like Nextcloud. I have Image set up, so that does all the pictures and stuff that I have. So what? Anybody else around here do stuff like that for individual, like very specialized format things? Like if you have something for your images or you have something for your videos or whatever. Anybody else do anything like that? Nobody wants to talk.
I mean, I can continue talking about how I just never really used Google for that stuff in it to begin with.
All right, Don, go ahead.
I think I've got this working now.
Yeah, we hear you.
Awesome. I've got a different setup for my backup. If we can talk about that for a minute,
Yeah,
I use a series of scripts. I learned how to script by setting up my backups in scripts. I don't use any kind of networking, so my backups are pretty simple. I have two computers, both running versions of Linux. And so what I'm backing up are my configs and data and that sort of thing. I have two places I back up to. One is pCloud through rclone. It's a great utility to do that with a lot of different backup solutions, by the way. And then I also back up just to a USB stick on the PC itself. So that's my backup thing. It's like 50 different scripts, because I don't want to back up the whole frickin' thing. All I want to back up is what I'm working on.
Mm.
It works for me.
So those are scripts that you've just written yourself?
Yeah, I wrote all of them.
Cool.
I wrote them and maintained them, and I've improved them over time as I've learned more things. So yeah.
Darcy, go ahead.
Hello?
Oh, you muted yourself again. There you go.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yep.
I have a camera. I was just too nervous to turn off, but I can turn it on now. It just
You're fine. I just don't feel like turning my camera on.
Sorry?
I'd turn on my camera, but you'd probably die.
Josh is doing it funny. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know why my microphone wasn't working before, but so I have I got a new desktop recently, and I've been thinking really hard about backups. I don't know that much about hardware. In the past, I use Google Drive a lot, and I don't like it, and it's very slow. And I tried using SyncThing. I think it's a lot more accessible than rsync, because you don't have to write scripts for everything. And I also want to use Nextcloud because, like Matt, I want to take notes, and it is a bit. I've been deliberating whether to use Obsidian or Joplin, and I'm like, oh, I'll use Joplin, but I don't like the file synchronization structure, and that's been bothering me. But like you can, like I think you can do a mix of both with Nextcloud, like before, like you can have Nextcloud syncing to something else. And I was trying to set it up on a Raspberry Pi, but now I'm thinking the Raspberry Pi is a bit too weak to. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I've got like a few machines now, and it's like mostly just been manually moving files, and I don't want to. And I think SyncThing is like very easy to use, but I also feel, I don't know, I feel nervous when I'm like, oh, I've got like 10 different versions of a file. And it's like when I'm taking notes as well, like let's say I'm taking notes on my phone, and then I take notes on my laptop, and they're in the same file. And how can I make sure that the notes don't override each other? That's pretty difficult. I think like if you don't use Nextcloud Sync, then it just doesn't know. But yeah, I'm not sure what to do about that, because that's that's what's most important to me. Is I want to import all my notes from Google Keep, and I've been taking Google Keep notes like Matt for a very long time, and I don't like it, but it's very simple to use. Yeah, so I feel very very similar to Matt with some note taking experiences and how that affects thinking.
We are going to do a whole episode one of these times, or whole lug on note taking stuff. It's going to be fun. Josh, you're going to go ahead. Don't forget to unmute yourself. I'm sorry, I muted. You had background noise going on. So
you're fine. I saw that message. So I would like to first of all make the mention that SyncThing is a sync utility. It is not backup. SyncThing's job is to just make sure that the thing that's on one machine, that's in one database, so one machine, is the exact same thing that's on the other machine. So if you're wanting to do a version controlled file, SyncThing is not the solution for that. And so if you're wanting to have like a version controlled system, you're going to I've never used Google Keep, so I don't know how it would work for this, but I know Joplin can sync through Nextcloud Notes, which Nextcloud Notes I believe can do timestamping for files. But there are some struggles with self-hosting Nextcloud as well. But I'll be honest with you, it's been a hot minute since I actually messed around with like Nextcloud specifically.
Probably what you want to do, Darcy, I don't know if you want to get off from Google Keep. I'm assuming that you probably would, but what I've been doing,
I do.
Yeah. I've been wanting to do that as well, and I found IOTAS, which Drew pointed me at. And it's very similar to Google Keep, but it's only a desktop app, so you have to find another thing to do it on your phone. So what I did was set up a Nextcloud instance, and that syncs it. But that is an additional overhead that you kind of have to mess around with, and I can understand why you would want to use SyncThing because it's very simple, right? If you wanted to go through and do the versioning stuff, rsync does that really well. But it's a technical, like if you don't have the flags exactly right on rsync, you're gonna find yourself in trouble. Did you want to go ahead? You had your hand up there for a second.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention SyncThing does have a setting for version control. It has a couple of settings. They're a bit simple. It's just like it keeps like the 3 past backups over like 24 hours, so you can change. I'm not sure whether it uses rsync as a backend, and I know rsync is like, it's like, you've got 2 choices, the one that works better out of the box or the one that works worse out of the box, but you can script it and you can add more and you can make it better if you have the confidence to not mess things up when you run that 10-line command to make everything work. I'll have a look at IOTA, you said?
Yeah, the problem I've always had with rsync was, or not with rsync, but with SyncThing, is that if you delete something on one machine and then you don't remember that you deleted it on the same things that get synced in weird ways.
I want like a notification when it happens. I don't know if it can do that.
I don't know. Josh, go ahead.
There is a SyncThing desktop application that you can use, but I don't think it supports notifications for that. But like I said, SyncThing's primary purpose is file synchronization. So yes, you can't. And but a neat thing about IOTAS is that IOTAS communicates through Nextcloud Notes, which there are multiple front ends for Nextcloud Notes. I know that on Android, I can't remember the name. Let me grab my phone real quick so I can get the name of that application. But there are multiple applications you can use that sync through Nextcloud. So, I know that IOTAS is specifically a GNOME application. And yes, proximity effect on the microphone there. I did walk away, that's why I got a little bit quieter.
We can tell.
So if you're wanting to make use of, so if IOTAS looks like garbage in your KDE environment, then you can use QOwn Notes, which is a Qt client that can sync through Nextcloud.
Yeah, it's not Josh. It's not the same. I mean, I know you're not saying that they're the same, but if you're looking for something simple like Google Keep, on as a Qt application, Qt Notes is definitely not it.
Well, yeah,
that thing
I
is
know it's
very
not simple.
complicated.
Now, if you have an Android phone, I just got my phone here. The application that I'm using is called QuillPad, and it's available on Android. I don't know if it's in Google Play. And then I believe that there are note-taking applications that can sync via Nextcloud Notes on iOS.
Well, there's a dedicated Nextcloud client on iOS, too.
Yeah, but I don't know if the Nextcloud client supports Notes directly.
No, I mean like a Nextcloud Notes client, like it's just Notes. Yeah. It's not well designed, but it works fine. Darcy, go ahead.
I just wanted to say I have actually been trying to use the PinePhone Pro, and I want to have Joplin work in mobile on the PinePhone Pro. I think that would be the best option because I can customize it the most if I can get that to work. But that is a lot to work, and Joplin does have a mobile app which is pretty good as well, and it can do like plugins, it can do themes, and I really want to be able to do like theming and skinning on my note taking as well. I guess it's just like, I want an app that does everything.
Right.
And Google does that really effectively, which is a problem.
All right, Drew, we're going to talk about notes. All right, so we're going to get into the notes thing. So a couple recommendations for you. One, Joplin is good, and you don't have to use Nextcloud if you don't want to, because there's multiple other sync options there for you if you want. pCloud is what I always used to use, and it supports, I think it supports pCloud, but not. It does Dropbox. It has its own synchronization stuff that you don't have to even pay for, I don't think. But if you're really looking for a one-stop shop for everything, and you don't care that it's not open source, Obsidian might be where you want to look, because that thing does literally everything. Now, for me personally, it's overkill. It's more of a markdown editor for me these days, but it will do everything. The problem is that if you want to use the built-in synchronization tools, you have to pay for it. But you could always put that into a Dropbox or Mixcloud or pCloud or whatever, and synchronize it that way and get around the payment services. Don, go ahead. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
I need to remind you, she's looking for a simple solution, and Obsidian's not simple.
That's true.
It's a plethora of choices, and it'll probably confuse you more than help you, unless you're a really super nerd like you are.
Well, she said that she wanted to do the theming of notes and stuff, and Obsidian does custom CSS sheets per note and per notebook and stuff like that. And yes, you're right, it is very complicated. But if you're looking into that kind of theming, Obsidian is probably the best one.
The issue is, if you really want to do that, you need to know CSS. Otherwise,
true,
you're out of luck with Obsidian.
They do have a whole bunch of themes that you can download without knowing anything. So
there is that. I just never found one that really worked for me when I was on Obsidian. But
yeah, usually when you want to do that kind of thing, you want to do your own, right? And you want to put your own spin on it, so the other people's stuff doesn't really work for you. But if you didn't know the CSS, you could at least go that way. But I do understand that I poo-pooed Josh's whole Qt notes because of the complexity. I haven't found a Qt version of a note-taking application that works well, that is simple as IOTIS. So I just use IOTIS.
That's cool.
But you could probably set up some. You could do something like what Drew has done in terms of like Geary, or not Geary, Genie. Did I have it right? Which one of those times, Drew? It was one of those, right? Genie?
It's Genie.
Yeah, I knew it was one of those. Too many. Geary's the email client. I always mix those two up. But anyways, you could do something like that with like a text editor. You could do something like with Kate if you were looking for a Qt version. I don't know how we got onto the whole Qt thing, but yeah. The whole note synchronization thing in terms of backups and stuff, I've just realized for myself that the best way to do it is through Nextcloud. It's just worked so easy. But I know some people who set it up via Git, like a private Git repository and stuff. So we kind of transitioned over there into notes there for a minute. But the earlier we talked about the amount of storage that we're having, and that's one of the things that I found very frustrating for myself, is that I do have a lot of stuff saved, but I have a somewhat odd interest in having as much storage as possible, even though I don't necessarily need it. Does anybody else have that same issue where you buy hard drives even if you don't necessarily have to have them?
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah.
I used to.
Well, I mean, my NAS is 54 terabytes, but I got it on a deal. I was like, okay. I'm using about half of it.
Bust. Max out. Hard drive slots. Bust. Bust.
I haven't yet, but I
Yeah.
want to. I desperately want to. Nate, go ahead.
Yeah, so I have the same addiction of hard drives like I do monitors. And y'all know how many I have.
That's great. I think if you counted the number of hard drives that I have in this room that are not in use, it's more than you can count on all 10 fingers and toes. 20 fingers and toes. Most of them, unfortunately, though, are really old. So I have a whole bunch of hard drives that are really old and so therefore really small. I have no clue what to do with the vast majority of them. I have no clue what's even on. No clue. Like half of them are probably IDE. Nate, go ahead.
I was going to say, I could probably match you in the amount of 2.5-inch hard drives I've pulled out of laptops.
Oh, I have a ton of those
They're
too,
all
yeah.
like tons of like 160, 300 gigabytes. And I'm like, why do I even still have them?
So I'm going to try to reach something here.
Resale value,
That's
sir.
fine for a system drive.
Resale value, because 2.5-inch drives are expensive and people need them.
War Thunder, go ahead.
I was gonna join Nate in that department. I usually end up pulling drives from people's computers when they, to me, or I get them in e-waste or whatever. I probably got 50 or 100 hard drives out there. It's just in my garage, but they're like a mixture of, some of them go as far back as IDE, like 40 gigabyte drives, like laptop drives, to I have a couple of 500s, but most of them are less than 250 gigs. Honestly, at some point, I honestly wonder why I have all of them. But then again, if I ever need a drive to store something to put into cold storage, they're there, and a lot of them are still good. I've at least vetted them that far.
So another area where I have a whole bunch of these things, like these NVMe drives. I probably have 20 of these things. So first off, when I'm a moron when it comes to technology. I pretend to know things, but I don't actually know things. I was vaguely aware of what PCI lanes were and knew the basic concepts of them. And I knew that they were a limited commodity on every machine, basically, at least consumer-based machine. You're going to only have so many PCI things. But I didn't think about that when I was building my home lab server. So I went out on eBay, and first I bought 4 1 terabyte NVMe drives, and then a couple NVMe, good Lord, Matt, fucking dyslexia, NVMe like expansion slot cards for PCIe. And it turns out the computers that I wanted to use them in would only support one of them, and then would only support one of the drives on that board. And then I got into the whole thing of bifurcation and all that stuff, and managed to get 2 of them working. And then before I learned my lesson, I went out and bought 4 2 terabyte ones for the home server I have now, which has more PCIe lanes. But it doesn't have the PCIe slots that I needed because I didn't check beforehand. I'm a dumbass, as I said, when it comes to technology. D-Dubs, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, they actually have some external enclosures for NVMe, not the decent, the semi-decent USB ones, but they've got actual enclosures. You can stack these things in and ideally connect it like mSATA or something better than USB. You don't get that nasty little I disconnected for no reason issue that I've seen sometimes with USB.
Yeah, I've never said this in my entire life, but Josh, you were right. When I was when I was building my home server, when I was talking about building it, Josh told me,
I said
don't use
essay.
USB. Don't use USB. It's a really bad idea. He was right. It's a bad idea.
Yeah. Granted, the current USB-C standard is much improved for that. but you still sometimes have driver issues. I've noticed in Linux.
What I've just done was I created a script that runs on the VM that I use for my NFS server. And basically what it does is every about 20 minutes or so, it checks and makes sure that all the drives that are supposed to be connected are connected. And if they're not, it'll just remount the damn thing.
Wait, Matt.
What?
I thought you used AutoFS.
I use NFS on that and then use AutoFS on everything else on the network.
You can use AutoFS to mount local drives.
Yeah. Well, these aren't local. They're passed through to a VM.
You can use it over the VM too.
Okay, well, I'll check that out. Didn't even think to use AutoFS, but I still what I have set up right now is just the script to check and make sure the damn thing out. Because even with FS tab set up correctly, so that if things aren't mounted and it should just carry on, for whatever reason the VM still crashes. That's stupid reason. But my lesson was that I needed to learn more about external connectivity, because there are ways to use like an external enclosure, like a JBOD, without using USB. But I didn't know any of those things before I got invested, and right now I'm invested in continuing where I'm going. Eventually I'll get some of the other stuff that I can use that will be more stable, but I'm not there yet. Problem is all that shit's really fucking expensive, and I don't I don't fancy spending any more money on that than I need to be honest with you. Okay, Nate, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, when are you going to spend the money for that? Was it 96 or 92 core Epic server?
Next year.
Next year. Okay.
It's not gonna be a server. It's gonna be my main machine.
Okay.
It's my reward for staying on OpenSUSE for 2 years. It probably won't be that high powered, but I'm gonna get as top of the line System 76 box as I can as a reward. I've been setting up for it basically since I started the challenge, and my goal is when I reach that 2-year mark will be to buy them.
So you're saying you need a reward for using OpenSUSE? Let's unpack that a little bit.
That's how good it is. You have to be bribed.
Okay, first off, you got to remember I set that goal before I used OpenSUSE at all. Second of all, you guys remember that Drew guy? He was really nice. Whatever happened to him? I mean, just he was great on the podcast for those 5 episodes. Then he just fucking disappeared. It was great.
Well, now he's famous, so ego.
Don't talk to me.
I'm not. We're not using Pop OS, Nate. Go away. Go ahead, Nate.
I was just going to say. It's interesting how that you have to reward yourself for OpenSUSE to buy a System 76 computer.
The first thing that I'll do is uninstall Pop and put a real distro on it.
I'm gonna make sure your order says Ubuntu just because of that.
I might order it with Ubuntu just to piss you off. You and your fake Ubuntu. He calls it better Ubuntu, but I don't know about all that. Okay, so first off, it was not a reward. It was not a reward for OpenSUSE. It was a reward for sticking on one distro for the entire time, okay?
Don't backtrack.
That's his story now.
He's got a mouth on him, that Drew guy. I didn't even realize. He's very sassy.
Just stick to your guns, Matt. Just stick to them.
No, OpenSUSE is fantastic. It's really good. You know what's really bad, though, is Darth Vader made me use a light theme for the next month. Oh, I'm in pain. Like, my eyes have been sizzling this entire time. But anyways, just to get back on topic and not have to worry about people. But yes, eventually, Nate, I'm going to have a more, capable machine. But I don't know what. So if we're going to get to the home server thing, let me talk about this. I want a different home server already. And I warned myself when I was getting into this, I didn't want to get into the rabbit hole. But I keep wanting different hardware. And I said, like, no, Matt, I don't want to go rackable. I don't want a server rack. I don't have the capability of moving it to a different room. It have to be in this room because I don't have Ethernet in any other room of the house. So it'd have to be in this room, which means that the same room that I record videos on would have a server rack. And I know that there are servers that are quiet, but if I want to, not spend that kind of money and go use, chances are I'm probably going to find one that's really freaking loud, and that worries me quite a bit. That's my eventual, like, at-home backup solution. Is that what I'd want to do is actually have like a rackable thing that I could put in a rack that has a whole bunch of hard drives in it, and then it'd back up to that. But we'll see. I need it to be quiet. D-Dubs, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. The servers that I use are actually towers. They're dual Xeons, and one of them goes to stupid amount of memory and stuff, and good storage, and they are just dead quiet.
Yeah, I have one, and you're right. It is quiet, and I like it.
Well, you have the HP.
Yeah, I have an HP workstation, and it works really well. It does have a single Xeon instead of a dual one, but I didn't really think I needed the extra horsepower in terms of CPU. But yeah, it works great. But I look at the people who have a server rack now, and where I was once like, I don't want that. Now I'm a nerd and I wanted it,
Right, but you can get shelves for a rack to put your towers.
And then
you are right. If you go get anything that is a server, it comes with a boatload of fans.
Yeah. Also worried about power and draw and stuff too.
Again, the fans will draw a little bit more, but I mean, if you're talking about processor to processor, and if you're talking about memory to memory, it's the same. They don't inherently use more power in the same configuration. What they offer you typically is things like redundant power supplies. They offer you modularity that you can open the case, replace fans, replace drives, replace almost anything but memory and processor live. That's the benefit of a rack.
Nate, go ahead.
So and your HP couldn't have been that expensive, but you can get nicely configured systems for $500 right now.
Yeah.
With 4.5 gigahertz, Xeon processors. So nothing to stop you from putting a rack in, dude.
Well, I mean, there are plenty of reasons why. Like
Well, not outside of monetarily.
Yeah, and space. Like I don't have a lot of. I mean, this is a 10 by 12 room. So there's a full-size bed in here, and dressers, and a standing desk, and another desk. So not a ton of room in here. But someday I'll just hire someone to run Ethernet. Nate, go ahead.
I was just going to piggyback off of what D-Dubs touched on. For me, I have a shelf in mine, and I have 2 desktops sitting in it. And it's in a nice little corner. It's by itself, so it leaves plenty of room for me to do anything else. And on top of that, if I need to do work on it, I do have the KVM switch that I just pull out, and I can switch in between all my machines and not have to worry about anything else, which is really nice. So for me, I personally would suggest for you to go the rack mount way, even if you can only get a smaller rack. I think you would actually find it would save you more space than you realize.
I could always get rid of the standing desk, to be honest with you, because it doesn't have a computer on it right now. I've been using it for my home lab, so and just standing there with my laptop. Josh, go ahead.
So there's this wonderful thing about server racks. You can get what's called a network rack. It's not going to be like a proper full-sized rack like what I have behind me. Which, by the way, that door's been hanging open. That background noise that you're hearing from me is actually my air conditioner, not my server rack. But so if you want to rack mount, you can get a network rack, and they don't have to sit on the floor. You can actually wall mount that. All you need is just be able to bolt it into a stud in your wall. Otherwise, you're ripping drywall down. So if floor space is not available, you probably have a corner up on the ceiling that you don't go anywhere near, and that'd be a perfect place to put a rack like that. Lighted, you might need a ladder if you ever need to work on one of the servers. But which, speaking on servers, you don't have to buy an actual server to do server things. Matt, you probably figured this out using like that little Optiplex that I believe you mentioned that you had at one point. That little Optiplex is just as capable as that $200 Dell R720 that you can buy off of eBay for $200. In fact, that Optiplex might actually perform better. What you miss out on when you're not buying the dedicated server gear is the dedicated server things. So stuff like, say, hot swappable fans or hot swappable power supplies, redundant power supplies, IPMI. That's what you're trading off on that. And what I actually do for my my server rack is that out of that entire rack, there's only one actual server. The rest of it is really just my old desktop PCs. And the cases that I'm using for them are like $100 eBay cases that I picked up years ago.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I was looking for a more rackable solution was just mostly because a lot of the like the 4U cases or whatever, you can throw a ton of hard drives in. And now I know they have cases or whatever that you can, get with a whole bunch of hard drive space in them, but most of those require you to, build them out. And I was looking for one that I could just get pre-built. And it's harder to find the desktop ones that with a whole bunch of case space or drive space or drive bays that are pre-built. They do exist, but they're more rare. D-Dubs, go ahead.
Yeah, just to add on to that, he's absolutely there for a lot of tasks. Those small boxes work great, but with a server class machine or even a higher end works machine, you tend to get more PCI slots. You tend to get PCI enumeration, things like that. You get other features on a server board that I think Matt might be able to leverage or want to leverage.
Redstone, go ahead.
I just wanted to point out that a network rack has not as much depth as a full rack, so you can't put really any server in it besides just short servers, and this could be also a limitation of a network rack. I mean, they are cheap, but you have limitations with them.
Still, it might help me because I actually have my network stuff sitting on top of a dresser, so this might be a better solution. Maybe. Nate, go ahead. You're gonna have to do the other mute thing you have to do, man. You only muted one of your things.
Gotcha. I just want to say, everybody, please subscribe to the Linux Cast and grow his channel, because the editor for the podcast needs a video server farm, and so help a man out.
And the only way Nate gets one of those is if Matt goes Mr. Beast.
Now he's gonna need one of those Pop OS ARM servers. They're gonna start selling.
Yeah, he should install a real distro on it when he gets it, though.
What he needs to do is he needs to sell more of those desk mats, because those things are actually pretty awesome. I'm using one right now. Yeah. If you go to shop.linuxcast.org, I think that's the domain, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. It's pretty solid desk mat, because and the only reason I'm using it is because, well, my other one might have caught fire.
All right. Hold on a second. We need the story then, Josh. You have to tell us how did you light your desktop on fire?
I was soldering.
Okay. When you're not using it, you're supposed to put it back in its holder. Silence. Nate, go ahead.
The truth is, he was actually compiling and his CPU overheated.
I was actually soldering up a ESP32 project. And the solder dripped, and it just lit up on fire. But then again, it was also one of those cheap little Amazon ones with like a, I'm guessing that was like cotton instead of polyester. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyways, Nate, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I also caught mine on fire and had to get a different one because a laptop battery exploded.
Okay.
That was a fun night.
That seems like more of a health risk. But yeah. Anyways, the server. let's go back to the backup thing just real quick. I have 3 drives right now that I don't run in RAID because reasons. But eventually, I've thought about using this setup just for like local storage, and then getting a NAS, because then it would just be a pure storage device. I wouldn't have to worry about, I'm not going to run any of my Docker stuff on there. I'm just going to I'm going to back up everything to it, and it's just going to stay there as the storage device. And I wouldn't have to worry. I wouldn't need anything huge. Like when I first started thinking about the whole home lab thing, I thought about getting like an 8-bay Synology or whatever, and that could be like my home lab thing. And I'm glad I want more dedicated home lab, but I'm still thinking about something maybe a little bit smaller, like a 2 or 3 bay that I could just use as a backup device that's just sits there, and all it does is pull in data from the various computers around my house. Because one of the troubles that I've been having, actually, one of the reasons why I decided that I was going to get away from rsync, because I wanted to use the same backup technology on all the computers, and unfortunately there are Windows clients on this network, and they're not going to end up going away. And while you can use rsync on Windows, it's not as nifty as it is on Linux. So finding a solution that kind of breaches the gap there, I don't think that that's going to end up being 100% possible, unfortunately, but we'll see as we go along. Unfortunately, again, I am now a Windows user in some ways. Good news is I don't have to worry about backing that thing up because nothing is saved on it. I can just feel the people unsubscribing from my channel as I say that. Nate, go ahead.
I just want to say, as a recent editor of the Linux Cast podcast, please, I'm looking for a new job now. No, I'm kidding. Totally kidding.
Fair change,
no,
sir.
I'm actually, I was going to say, I'm actually right there with you. I do have to keep a Windows machine myself because of DaVinci Resolve. Sometimes, even on Pop OS, it has a few issues at times, especially when it comes to actually rendering out a video. And so, yeah. And it's specifically just a Linux thing because it works fine on Windows.
Yeah, so I did the same thing. So the podcast that I edited while you were on vacation, I edited that whole thing on Linux, like the whole thing, and it worked flawlessly. Now, I had some issues with the UI in terms of it being small, so I had to go in and change the setting to make it bigger. But once I started rendering it, it got to like 84%, and then it just completely froze the entire system. And like, I was like, okay, that's fine. Shit happens. So I did a hard reboot because it wouldn't even let me get into a TTY. It was just completely frozen. And so I did a hard reboot, got back into it, re-rendered it, got to the exact same percentage, and it did the exact same thing over again. I was like, this sucks. Now I'm going to have to figure out how to get this file and all the files associated with the project over to Windows. And I had no clue about the whole archive project at that point, so I ended up just saving the project and doing it manually. It ended up fine. I will say this. Sambo remains the worst technology invented by mankind. Like, it is atrociously bad. And not as in, like, when it works, it's fine, but more the setup process across different machines is so inconsistent. Like, on one distro, you'll set it up and it will just work. And you're like, oh, that wasn't bad at all. On OpenSUSE, it won't work. Like, I did actually finally get Windows to see the damn thing, but then when Linux permissions kicked me in the pants, and I still haven't been able to figure that out. Because Linux permissions, the second best thing ever created by man.
So I used Windows for about 30 minutes, and I burst into flames. I'm just saying, But then again, it was actually worse because on my test machine, I tried to put OpenSUSE on my test machine. It burst into flames.
Well, see, the thing is that you use Debian, and therefore all your machines are probably really old and crusty. I'm just going to put that out.
That is true.
D-Dubs, go ahead.
As well as myself.
Just out of curiosity, did you try NFS on Windows?
I didn't try. No, I looked into it a little bit, but it looked like it was going to be more than I really wanted to. Now, some people point. So there's a SSHFS fork for Windows, and I thought about trying that. What I ended up using and that worked really well was actually a Linux Mint project called Warpinator. Warpinator worked flawlessly. It was so good. I was very, very surprised. You just open it up on both machines and it sees each other and you just send it along. And yeah, that's a Linux Mint project, because Linux Mint can't just fucking do a distro. They have to do everything. Sorry, I get a little saucy. Sean,
I appreciate some of the work that Mint has done. I'm going to give it 100% credit for what
I
it's
just
done.
like giving him crap.
True.
Sean in the chat asked me if I looked into local send. I have looked into it. It does really well with small files. I don't know how it would do with big files. I've never actually tried, so I might be totally off base on that. But that's the basis for a lot of those like drop things that you see in the App Store. Is actual they're just local send front ends. Nate, go ahead.
I was going to say, if y'all really want to completely lose all of your hair and pull out the hair from your eyeballs, try Windows Server without any subscriptions.
Does it even work?
That's the hell that I go through at work.
Wait, because they don't want to pay for it, or because?
Yeah, it's expensive.
It's expensive.
It's ridiculous. It's expensive, like VMware ESX expensive.
Yeah.
Isn't it like
thousands of dollars per server just for the license, not the client access licenses?
Yeah, and then you also have, if you want to do the backups, that's also a subscription to like Azure or any of those kind of things, the services. If you want to maintain your employees on, that's also a subscription that I didn't know about. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean it's horrible. It's not even ridiculous. I mean it leaves that in the dust.
There used to be a hole in the server. If you used a P90 Pentium 90 CPU, it used to just work without having to be like without having to pay for it. Basically, you know, you could just get the.
Like I say, back in the day, they were very smart, because Novell at the time was king of the file and print share, king by 90+%. So they just came in and said, well, you got to have client access licenses, wink, wink. And you would just literally just put in the number you want. And it would say, okay. It was unenforced until they became king. And then all of a sudden now they enforce it.
Well, just on the Windows side, it used to be very like now that you have to sign in with your Microsoft account, everything's attached to your Microsoft account. Activating Windows is a lot different than it used to be. It used to be you'd have one key and then just lie your ass off every time they asked how many computers you've installed it on. And then when you hit your limit or whatever, you could just call them, talk to somebody random and tell them, oh, I'm just reinstalling. It's the same machine. I'm just reinstalling.
Or I just got a new motherboard. I had to rebuild my system.
I needed a new hard drive. I'm just reinstalling. It's fine.
But sir, the CPU has changed. Yeah, I gotta get the whole thing burned up.
Yeah. Josh came at it with his soldering iron. I can't tell you how many times. I think so. I have 3 Windows 7 licenses. I'm not sure how I got the other 2. I guarantee I didn't pay for them. One I did pay for them because it's like literally in a box. I also did that for Vista. That was the whole Vista era in terms of Windows stuff in Office. You remember those, like, there were plastic cases and you had to like slide them open. They just don't do that anymore. Those, kind of the days, but still. Anyways, I have 3 Windows licenses. I only ever use one Windows 7 license, and I only ever used one of them. I just used it over and over and over again, probably on up to probably 10 different computers. It was nuts because like every time someone I knew needed to reinstall Windows, I just used my own key and I just say, yeah, I'm just reinstalling, it's fine. Nate Pick, go ahead.
I'm going to give Microsoft a little credit here. Just wait a minute. Let me explain. The Windows license key phone number still works, surprisingly, and I use it for retro gaming. So, great job, I guess.
Windows itself is just so, Windows 11. I mean, I use Windows 10 a little bit, just because I have members of my family who won't switch to Linux. But Windows 11 is just so bad. War Thunder, you had your hand raised there for a second.
Yeah, no, I just told Nate, I said you could still phone activate Windows XP if that's relevant to you. No, Windows 11 made my wife switch to Linux with. Like, she saw that crap, and about 30 seconds later, because I was messing with it on my gaming PC, and she was like, I want nothing to do with that. So what's the alternative?
You use Linux Mint, didn't you?
BSD.
Basically, yeah.
Josh, nobody's BSD. I'm assuming he wants to stay married. I'm just making that assumption. Nate, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to for many years.
To Josh's credit, BSD is not a bad server distro since we're talking about servers.
Well, I mean, that's what it was. I think that was what it was developed for, right? D-Dubs, go ahead.
BSD technically was long before there were anything other than really servers. There were no graphics. Everything was terminal. So could be we're talking late 80s. So none of that stuff really existed. Not even late 80s, early 80s.
I was 4. I was born in 85.
So yeah, I mean a lot of the systems I used back in '78 were actually DEC LA 120 printers with a keyboard on them. There weren't even, couldn't afford CRTs. So yeah, it's changed quite a bit. But honestly, the BSD is not even a bad desktop. You can run whatever you want on it, including Hyperland if you want to. But it's a lot of, in my opinion, it's a lot more work to manage them and configure them compared to Linux.
So
and the compatibility, the driver support.
Yeah. When Tyler was messing around with BSDs, one of the things I always asked him is like, why don't they just try, and I didn't gotta remember, as I'm a dumbass when it comes to technology, but why didn't they just try to get Flatpaks or snaps or app images or whatever working on BSD? Because if they could, that would broaden their software support like immensely, like quadruple it or whatever. And that just would seem to make fun of me, or would make sense to me. But I don't know if that's even technologically possible. I've never actually used BSD, by the way. People have asked me many times to, but I just haven't. D-Dubs, go ahead.
Yeah, different kernels, different a lot of everything. Yeah.
I didn't assume that it was just like a plug and play thing. I figured there'd be a lot of work to go into it. But it seemed like it would make a lot of sense to me to try something like that, because then it would. Because one of the reasons why I've just stayed away from it, not even tried it, is because I know that if I wanted to do something along the lines of like try to get, because I need OBS, and OBS just isn't there. Don, go ahead. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Yeah, on FreeBSD they have something called the Linixulator, and that allows you to run a lot of the Linux packages. It has been suggested to enable Flatpaks on FreeBSD, and the folks that run it say, with the way it is set up, there's just no way they can make that work.
Yeah, I know that Flatpak has some quirks, technological wise. Josh, go ahead.
So OBS does work on FreeBSD, it's just not on OpenBSD.
Okay, well that makes sense. The reason why I didn't know, because Tyler was using OpenBSD, I think. I don't have any experience with any of the BSD guys, so I don't know anything about it, and really I don't really have any interest. Linux is just good enough for me, and I guess if I wanted to expand the channel content or whatever, I could look into BSD, but as is right now, this just stuff is good enough for me. D-Dubs, go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing is BSD has really made a name for itself for many, many years in embedded devices, network devices. Many SAN controllers use it as their boot OS. and to provide a lot of the services. It's extremely small and fast, low latency. I mean, it has a lot of things going for it when you're in that kind of space, because over the decades it has been tuned that way. Just a little piece of history.
Yeah. Nate, go ahead.
Just backing up D-Dubs. That's also the reason why Apple backed macOS on top of it, because it was literally one of the fastest things that was on the market.
And then they went.
License also helps.
And then they went and made macOS. Better than Windows, though, which is not saying all that much. So, someone asked you, Nate, why they don't just use Linux at your work.
Ask me?
Yeah, they asked you. They asked, aren't Linux servers free?
So yes, but it has a lot to do with the fact that technically I'm a federal employee and it's through federal funding. And so certain protocols actually require there be Windows servers for certain applications that have to be used. But thankfully, we have been slowly getting more Debian servers in. And I have gratefully been the one that set those up. But yeah, mostly it's a federal funding thing that has to do with a certain protocol that they want in place, and we can't get around it. So they're going to stay there probably until either it closes or we finally get some people that know what they're doing in government. Anyways.
Is the protocol they need that crowd one, that thing that just caused the 8 million computers to die across the world? D-Dubs, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a number of different specs the government goes that only things like even drives have to go get certified for FIPS. These encrypted drives. So there's a lot of BS that really locks in Windows because there really is no other competitor.
Microsoft is very clever when they did. I'm sure there was no reason why they did that when they collaborated with Microsoft.
Yeah, but there's one other thing that I want to add to that is most companies don't adopt Linux because there really only are a few commercial Linuxes to choose from. Because most companies, especially of any size, aren't going to risk, their infrastructure. So, look at CrowdStrike on anything other than something that is commercially supported.
So what you're saying is they're not going to just go out and download a Arch distro ISO and install that on there? No, because the
CFOs, CTOs, all these other ones, plus directors, worried about share price. If something goes wrong, they've got no contract with anybody, no support. They can't just say, well, go on a Discord server and ask somebody. They might have an answer to why your servers won't boot. There's also, things like actually having SLAs in place, for support.
Going into the Arch forums as a government employee and asking a question, they're going to come back and read the fucking manual, dude.
Exactly. That's what's going to happen, yeah. Well, go to this wiki, dude. Oh, you mean the one that's out of date? Yeah, so unfortunately, for a small company, as long as the IT staff can handle it, obviously they can use any Linux they're familiar with, or NetBSD or anything else. But it's getting companies to sign off on it because of, in their minds, the insecurity, the uncertainty. Yeah, I mean, it's so bad that some places you can't even have it in the lab. You can't have just any old Linux or any old OS. There has to be a partner agreement with some company to support it.
Well, that's also just an insurance thing too.
Yeah, I mean, they consider it mitigating risk. Go ahead.
I was just thinking, I'm sorry, but going back to what you said earlier, like there's not a lot of corporate places that they can get their Linux from. If you think about it, there's like what, 3? Canonical, Red Hat, and SUSE, right? There's like, that's about it. I'm assuming that there are like more that we don't know about, but those are like the big ones, right?
Oh yeah, Canonical, Red Hat, Oracle, SUSE.
Oracle's another one. Yeah, I forgot Oracle. And SUSE is not even like here. Like they don't do stuff stateside. It's all EU. As far as, and like, I'd be surprised if there's hardly any in terms of market share for SUSE here on American soil.
But funny enough, there's still support for it within a lot of products. When you look at the, excuse me, some of the like storage products, which is what I do, there's a lot of support for that still. Maybe that's because it's so big in the EU.
Yeah.
But it's the Red Hat, Oracle, Ubuntu, and SUSE that I see as officially listed Linux distros. But if you bring the older times CentOS or something, nope, it's the same code. Nope.
We all knew that Red Hat would rule all. Nate, go ahead. You're still muted, Nate.
Yeah, 2 mutes. This is turned into a nightmare. Anyways, what I was going to say is, even piggybacking off of that, like even for our instance, technically our Debian servers are only storage servers, and that's it. As far as application process, there's nothing else that is attached to it. And I wanted them to actually start moving some of the capital, because some of them are actually Linux compliant, and we could use them, but they are afraid of losing the funding from the federal government. And so therefore all of our backups for files are mostly just those servers. And that's just mostly because the head IT guy was familiar with Debian, and that's what he wanted. So
yeah, I have so there's a couple questions. So Speed wants to know in the chat, Matt, will you cover OpenSUSE and SUSE Corp split? Probably not, because I still don't believe that OpenSUSE will rebrand itself. I know that there's a lot of power and stuff behind it, but as of right now, well, if it happens, then I'll talk about it. But I still don't believe that's going to happen. We'll see. There's a lot of pushback behind that in the community, and I don't know.
I also highly recommend reading that emailing list discussion that they're having, because that's actually not an official SUSE action that they're taking.
No, it was a recommendation by 2 SUSE employees at a conference or something like that, and it stirred up a whole bunch of drama. But Linux nerds love drama. I don't know if y'all know this, but drama is a dime a dozen in a lot of these places. So I try to stay out of as much as possible. That's why I didn't cover the NixOS stuff. I don't care. I know SUSE gets a lot of junk because of their politics and stuff like that. I don't care. If your corporation believes in politics in a certain way, whatever, I don't care. Just because I use your product doesn't mean I agree with your politics. I drive a Ford doesn't mean I necessarily think Henry Ford was an awesome guy, So I mean, that's just the way that I look at it. But I know other people are different that way. People constantly tell me, "Man, you should cover this and that," and I stay out of the Hyperland stuff because they're always seem to be enveloped into some drama, left and right. They're in Nix, SUSE, all of them. Nate, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask you: is 2025 you're going to buy the new Ford electric truck?
If somebody wants to give it to me, sure. But no, I'm very much with vehicles like I am with computers. If at least up until next year, I suppose, I buy used stuff, like only used. Always. Like I haven't bought a new car since I don't know, 2007, something like that, 2008. Like that was like the last time I brought a brand new vehicle, and I haven't since then, and probably never will. I'm just not interested in it. So yeah. Someone else that in the chat said you just want to let Matt know that he's a cool guy. I wanted to read that out loud. Let y'all know Matt is a cool guy, and it says so right in the chat. So thank you, Technominded, for that. Someone else.
I call bullshit.
Josh, someone asked you, bud.
Tell your wife she did a good job.
Someone else. I missed a few questions here. We covered the Linux server free Someone else said Windows 11 is the reason why I switched to Linux. I think that's going to be true for a lot of people. Although, really, when you look at the numbers, Windows 10 is going to just be the place where Windows 10 is going to be the next XP. People are going to use it forever, like literal forever. So Microsoft better have their P's and Q's, in line when it comes to updating that browser. Because people are going to be using that version of Edge for a long time, so they better be able to update it for a long time. Otherwise, you're going to have IE 6 again, which is just horrifying to think about. Nate, go ahead.
I was going to say, you do realize that they just recently have slowly started replacing the Windows XP machines that's in government, and there's still several entities that still have it as Windows XP.
So I used to work at Kroger when I was in college, and even a little bit after college. And their server room, if you wanted to call it a server room, up in the executive offices or whatever, some of those things were still using DOS. Okay, like actual, not like MS DOS, but actual DOS. And one of those computers was running at that point. Now this was 2010, so I'm hoping that it has changed since then. But that was actually running their point of sale system, was the DOS box, which is fucking. I mean, that thing crashed all the time, and some of their stuff that was on more modern systems was running just Windows 9. It was like Windows Me or something like that. They had one server, it was like Windows Me, not server, but like a computer. It was Windows Me. Like, it was horrible. I do not know who did the IT at that point when I was working for that company, but whoever it is, I feel so very sorry for them, because I don't know that they've actually updated it since then. I know a couple people who still work there. I suppose I could ask them. But yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay, Josh. Are you okay? You didn't set anything on fire, did you?
No, I'm sitting here sorting collectible cards here, and I just dropped a stack.
Pick up 52. Trying to go
300.
So someone says that they use the speed. He says he has 4 10-terabyte Western Digital Reds in RAID 5. Nate, go ahead.
I was actually going to ask you. I'll ask everybody here. Do y'all worry about cables much? Because especially like if you watch these very popular networking guys on YouTube, like their cable management is so immaculate. I don't think I mentally could do it.
Mine is horrible. War Thunder, go ahead.
Yeah, I do worry about cabling a lot, because I actually had such a bad time here. Because I mean, I'm cheap, right? So one of the things that I've always done is I'll be at Goodwill or a thrift store, and that network cable's like $1 or $2. I'll just pick it up in case I need it. And so I had everything wired back here, and what I found out when I put the server in, especially after I got Starlink, the wireless was faster than the wired, and I'm pretty sure that's not how wired internet is supposed to be. So I had definitely done something wrong I also had an issue that I found out after I traced the wires. I had a switch into a switch into a switch, and one of those switches bifurcated off to feed my wife's office, and so I just tore it all out. Just doing it wireless is more than enough right now, so that's what we're doing. I still have the server in that wired and on a switch, but yeah, your wireless is not supposed to be faster than your wired.
Josh, go ahead.
So, I do run wires everywhere. It's a mess if you know where to look. But yes. So like the cleanest method you have for like actually keeping your wires nice and tucked away. For like Ethernet cable specifically, just buy the big roll and just make your own Ethernet lines, and then it can be just as long as it needs to be.
So what you're
Plus
trying to
5
say,
inches.
what you're trying to say, is that you shouldn't have a giant roll of 100 feet of Ethernet cable just lying on top of a dresser?
I mean, No,
Because that's then I probably
you had the 1,000-foot rule.
No, I didn't. It was just. It was on eBay. It looked like a good deal, so I just bought a whole bunch. And then I have them all over my room. Nate, go ahead.
Well, I just want to ask Josh. I have a 500-foot box sitting on my desk right now. Is that tech enough?
Yeah. Especially if it's already open.
Yep, it's already open.
There you go. You're doing it right.
So I would just like to call Atticus, who left a comment on my OpenSUSE 1 year later video. Says, "Nah, mate, I'd agree with you, but some years back, but OpenSUSE needs to keep up with the times. Nix is the way of the future." No, it's not. Okay, I just want to
can make OpenSUSE just as composable as.
Why bother? OpenSUSE is just fine the way that it is. Even Zipper, we like you, Zipper.
It doesn't even affect the OpenSUSE specifically. All I'm doing is just Ansible scripts.
And yeah, the Nix fanboys came out today for whatever reason, and I think my Nix video got shared on like the Nix Reddit or on the forum or something. I had a lot of comments today on the Nix video.
You don't even have to do that. Just put Nix in the video name, and then they will just come naturally. The YouTube algorithm just loves them right now because there's a lot of people looking into Nix specifically to like get into the cloud market. That's my theory, at least. Because I still get comments on my one NixOS video that I pushed up like a year and a half ago at this point.
Nate, go ahead. You're still muted, Nate.
I was going to ask, for anybody that uses NixOS, and I know how to use NixOS, have y'all got a job like Tyler has been saying if you use NixOS? Because I already had it before I tried it, so I'm just wondering if somebody else ever actually got a job for learning NixOS, like Tyler says it's that it would be.
Nobody offered me a job when I was using NixOS, but that's probably because I couldn't even explain it to myself, let alone anybody else. I know someone said that their only backup solution was NixOS configuration files. So I'm not sure that is the best way to go, but
it's a solution.
Well, it backs up your configuration, not your data.
Well, if you, I suppose, now you remember, I didn't use Home Manager that much. Can you use Home Manager to back up your regular data or just your configuration files?
Well, no, Home Manager, you would typically use it to, pull down your configurations, typically from a Git repository. But again, you're not going to typically back up your data, quote unquote, with Home Manager. It's really about your configuration.
That's what I thought. NixOS is the way of the future. I still don't think so.
I love NixOS, and I don't agree with that. But I also don't agree OpenSUSE is the way of the future. I don't agree. There's nothing out there that to me says this is it.
If there's going to be a future that's different than the one that we're currently living in terms of like Linux distros, where it's just kind of fractured and everybody's doing basically their own thing, it's going to be something like Universal Blue or Bazite or whatever, where it's it's an immutable base, has stuff on top of it. But even then, it's not going to be that. It's going to be that and whatever Arch does, whatever Debian does, whatever Ubuntu does, whatever SUSE does. It's going to be basically the same thing we have now, but immutable.
Quick interruption before Nate says Pop OS. Just wanted to put that.
No, Cosmic. I do want to say just about immutable. I understand their appeal. I think in a lot of things like a Steam Deck or an appliance or something you want to give to your grandmother that just works, immutable is wonderful. But for anybody, or for a Windows user that's converting over, if you give them an immutable, you just prevent a lot of breakage. But as a standard, everything immutable, not for this kid anyway.
Well, I mean, there's going to be nerds like us that are never going to be as happy with an immutable distro as we are with what we have now. But I think that we're not the audience of it. I really don't. Nate, go ahead.
I was going to say the 2 points. First of all, there will never be a distro, a single distro that we know as a Linux distro that will be the future, because we'll always be fighting over our own individual little distros that we all like. That's just the nature of Linux.
ChromeOS sucks. I'm sorry. What?
Go suck my cosmic. Anyways. So, but the fact of the matter is, if you actually want to talk about a Linux distro that's using the Linux kernel, okay, I hate this as much as I hate saying this. It's ChromeOS.
Well,
because it's cheap, it's fast, and it's in every single school.
Damn it,
Oh,
Google.
it does become popular.
Gentoo wins again.
The problem with that though is I mean, it's in tablets and phones and everything else. Again, appliances basically, but not that many people live on a tablet. It's not, especially not in those who actually enjoy computers.
Well, no. The problem is, D-Dubs, is that we're all old. I mean, no offense to people who are fairly young who are listening or who are on this lug, but we're still relatively old. Okay, the kitty boppers, Chrome OS is going to be for them what Windows and Mac was to the people who went to school in the 90s. You know. And that's just the way that it's going to be, because Microsoft doesn't have the foothold in education that they used to. Chrome OS is it, because the schools can go get a Chrome OS box for every student and get they can spend $50 on each of them, right? And if the kid trashes it, they're out $50. You know, the reason why, like a few years ago when the iPad came out, Apple had this big push for iPad in education, but those things cost $400, and it's a big difference. Nate, you're first. Go ahead.
Well, I was actually going to say, since my business actually runs off a lot of PC repairs and laptop repairs, I think people would be surprised of how many are Chromebooks that come in through that I take care of, and it's mostly because it's a bunch of a younger generation that even in college now, that's what they use is Chromebooks. And there, as a matter of fact, is getting to the point that if they do upgrade to a different OS, it turns up being Mac OS with the M series stuff. So as much as I don't like saying it, because I still have problems with Google, really Chrome OS is kind of the distro of the future. And Josh is right. It's based off of Gen 2, and Gen 2's kind of got a nice little plus up there.
I just want to mention, I'm going to interrupt and just mention it to everybody. I'm not actually on a Gen 2 system right now. I'm using Arch.
Shocking. Drew, go ahead.
The world just exploded.
What's strange is I didn't realize this about Chrome OS in schools, because where I live, it seems like in fact, my son, when he was in high school, it was an iPad school. That was it. They had iPads for everything, books, and it seemed like a lot of the private schools, at least in our area, were all on iPad, and you had to buy the iPad as soon as they came in as freshmen, and they got to keep it after they were seniors. But it was everything was based on the iPad, so not Chrome OS.
Yeah, I
just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think that the keyword there is private schools, right? I think because you're going to be able to pay for this stuff there, whereas like a lot of school districts can give out the Chromebook stuff, and you just it still
but I
belongs
don't
to
know.
the school.
iPads aren't that expensive, are they? I mean,
well, I'm gonna remember I'm not a school thing, but I know when they first came out and they were pushing the education stuff, it was $399 is what they were selling the base level for, and well, that doesn't seem like a lot when you got to buy it for 1,200 kids every year. It would. And especially when you compare it to a Chromebook, which again you can get for like $150, it's like half the price, right? Now, granted, that's these days, and the situation has changed, and I haven't kept up on it as much as I should have. Nate, go ahead.
Yeah, I was actually going to say it has a lot to do with the pricing of it, because if you actually think about it, you can get for $150, you can get a 15-inch screen or a 15.6 inch screen, basically a laptop, and it runs Chrome OS, and you can do that versus what is it, the Mac Air that's the cheapest right now, the iPad Air, and I think that was close to $400 or $500. So it is a cost savings issue. If you're in a private school, you're being paid by your students' parents, so that makes more sense of having nicer things with an iPad. But for a lot of public schools, they really can't afford to go out and buy all these iPads. They have to run Chrome OS because just the funding's not there. And then you have the crazy situation in my state where literally every single little small town has a stinking school. I don't understand why, but it is what it is. And so it really depends probably on location, but I would say probably 70% of the country would probably be running Chrome OS in schools because it's cheaper,
Well,
especially for public setting.
and the ones that don't give out technology at all and require the students to buy themselves. I mean, it's so much easier for a parent to go and say, well, I'm going to, I can spend $250 on a laptop, and that's the thing that's going to get them through the entire 4 years of high school. And it's just, there, right? Instead of paying, I mean, you can't, as just a regular consumer, you can't go out and buy a Mac laptop for less than $1,000. Unless you're in like university and have an email, in which case you get like an education discount, and they're going to give you a couple $100 off, but it's still really, really freaking expensive. And then if you have multiple kids, you have to have multiple devices or whatever. And I know a lot of schools, that's one of the reasons why schools give out the things, and it's not something that's relying on the parents to provide. But also, I mean, from a technological standpoint, I'm not sure what the MDM strategy is for iPads and stuff. Like, I don't know what the whole thing is there, but I know that Google does, from what I know, which is not very much, I know Google does a lot better job of the MDM stuff than, I don't even know if they even still call it MDM, mobile device management, that's what they used to call it in IT, managing stuff like that. So, but I know that they do, like, controlling a whole fleet of Chrome OS seems like something that Google would be really good at. I'm not sure that Apple would be similar, because Apple doesn't really do enterprise anymore, at least as far as I know. Like, they don't have servers or any of that stuff. I mean, but then they do have iOS, so maybe that would translate over. Yeah, I don't know. War Thunder, go ahead.
I was going to say they used to. I don't know what's current about what I know anymore, but back when I was in college, I used to work for an IT department on the side just to make some money, and we managed a small fleet of iPads. I mean, I'd say fleet. I think there were probably 25 or actually, there's probably more like 50 of them, but they were all iPads for other university students that were doing medical stuff and whatnot, and they needed it to take notes and to do certain pictures and stuff for a class. Real nice iPads, the ZAG keyboards, like, they did not spare any expense. But the cool part was that when you used Apple's MDM software, at least on those, you could actually install certificates to the system for Wi-Fi, so they didn't have to log in. You could even install a system certificate. So to that iPad, whatever managed Mac that managed those iPads, that iMac is God. It can do whatever it wants to you. So if that student goes and locks it to their iCloud account, which was a very common occurrence back then, I just plugged it into that iMac and said, destroy it, reimage it, take it back to the default apps and stuff that we put on there, because you could specify even specific versions of apps, create a blueprint that would totally reimage the iPad. And even if it was iCloud locked, you'd see the spinny wheel and it would erase the device and start over. And so, I mean, they had some cool tools. I know they discontinued the Apple Configurator software, so I don't know what they do anymore. But back then, we pretty much had full control once we figured it all out.
I'm assuming they have something, because a lot of corporations run iPhones as their fleet of mobile devices. So there has to be something there but I'm not in IT, so I have no clue what's going on there. But the whole school thing is always very interesting, because a lot of people that get into Linux and realize that Linux is free, and they think, oh, well, why didn't my school use this? Well, then you always have to explain to them that in order for them to do that, first off, they'd have to know that Linux exists, which probably only the IT nerd guys know. but also, they'd have to have the knowledge base for someone there to run the stuff, right? Also, Linux doesn't do mobile like at all. Like there's nothing. I mean, yes, you could put it on a laptop, and that's about as mobile as you're going to get, right? But you're not going to have anything else on top of that, and getting the hardware means that you're going to have to take every piece of hardware, put Linux on it, unless you're going to go from like a Linux vendor or whatever, which in case is probably going to be more expensive because Linux vendors are more expensive. And I mean, assuming that maybe if they bought a whole bunch of them, they get a discount or whatever, but it's still not going to be as cheap as what Google can offer these places. Plus, there's the whole management of those devices. It's not as prevalent or whatever as what Google would offer. Nate, go ahead.
Can I just point out all these spoiled brats that are growing up now with all these Chromebooks and iPads? And we had that one building that was like 3 miles away from the school, and it had all these old crappy square monitors with Windows XP.
We had to walk there both ways, uphill
Lord.
in the snow.
Yeah, exactly. It was horrible. And if you want to do research, you had to make arrangements to be able to go use the computer. Oh, that was a mess. And now they just walk around with their stuff.
You remember we had to navigate a file system and like organize things in folders? Yep. Like who does that anymore? Just throw everything on the desktop.
Like when we were in school, Alta Vista was the search engine. Or Ask Jeeves.
I had to use encyclopedias.
Dude, when I finally got to high school, they had encyclopedias on discs. I had a whole 12-disc set. It was Encarta, man. Remember Encarta? Jesus. Nate, go ahead.
I was going to say, I remember the old days when I went to the library and had to use that rolling index card thing just to find the book that I wanted.
I love the library still has that.
I had to say, I knew the guys at Digital that did Alta Vista.
Oh, did you? I
love that search engine. Oh man,
it was a good search engine for the time. It was before Google.
Absolutely, it was before everything.
Yeah. So and then
before Alta Vista, you had Gopher.
Then Ask Jeeves or whatever came around, and people used that for a long time.
Ask Jeeves, Hotbot, Excite, Yahoo.
Everyone had their own little GeoCities website.
And you had the meta searches like Mama, Dogpile.
Yep.
We are all officially old. Nate, go ahead. You don't have to raise your hand anymore, man. We're done.
Okay. I was going to say, I would much rather just use Clippy. He was so nice.
Hold on.
I am a
secret.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say the secret is ChatGPT this whole time is actually Clippy. He's been running everything from the back end.
That's what I was gonna say. I was like, I'm astonished that Microsoft has missed the opportunity to make Clippy into an AI assistant. Like how have they not done that? Like people hated Clippy, but also they remember him nostalgically, right?
Yeah.
Like why haven't?
Well, he was. Yeah, it was so poorly done. But I mean, this is the people that brought us, Copilot, and brought us
the train wreck.
That too. No, the the recall. I mean, it's like, what are you thinking?
Okay, I got a question. Does anybody remember the one that had to do with the dog? But you had to specifically install it, and it would slow down your PC so bad because it was constantly searching everything.
Well, I remember when Windows first put an indexer on, as part of their OS, and your disk is churning away, going, "Why is my system so slow?" That's re-indexing all your files for you.
Nate, do you remember Bonsai Buddy?
Oh yeah. Yep. Yep. 100%. Oh, I feel old now.
No offense, Nate, but you are old, buddy.
Fun fact, I just learned what a batch file was the other day.
Really?
Yep.
I think the dog was Rover, correct?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I can't believe this is where we ended up on the LUG. Bunch of old guys just
So let's talk about how our backup systems.
Well, we did.
Well, I run Rover, so
we did meander from the thing. But we've come a long ways from those days in terms of backup, though. It was, you know, if you think about it, if you wanted
Are you
to,
trying to tie this in?
man, I'm trying, man. If you used to want to back up, you used to have to use dial-up and all. You know, if you can you imagine trying to back up to the cloud, the cloud such as it was?
Do you remember
Yes,
super drives?
Floppy
You remember
disk.
and jazz drives? Super drives, jazz drives.
Jazz drives, yeah.
I've got a jazz drive in there.
Zip drives. That's the other one. That was the first one.
And then you had the newfangled kids come in like, oh yeah, I'm gonna put all my stuff on CD. Actually, right behind me, I have a little CD collection holder thing that has all of my iTunes library. Because when iTunes, you used to be able to click backup library to CD, and it would do it. Yeah, and one of those things, and it would do it per disc. So I have like gigabytes upon gigabytes on these like 30 discs or whatever of all my music files from like God, that had to have been like 2006 or something like that, ages and ages ago.
They're going to take him up centuries from now and go, what is this?
I'm 100% positive, knowing it's Apple, that those things are on there in a proprietary format that you wouldn't be able to actually access if you wanted to, because it split them between different discs. So there's no way it was just storing MP3 files on there. I'm actually tempted now to find an optical drive somewhere in my house to throw it in there, see what actually is on there. War Thunder, go ahead.
Yeah, I was actually just going to say, the reason why that giant stack of, I believe those are my CDs, because I have CDRs and DVD-Rs. I had a whole bunch that I bought at a thrift store one time, a long time ago. I actually had a machine I had to burn a DVD for so I could boot into a Linux live environment so I could extract data from the machine, because USB boot was not an option. And I've even somewhere around here got a floppy disk of a plot boot manager, just in case, which I'll probably use because I've got a 386 I'm actually pulling around, replacing some caps on. I'll need to make sure it works.
Blackware 3.7 floppies.
Okay. So there used to be thing, and I'm probably misremembering the name of it. It's something like iSync or something like that. You would buy it in a box. It would come with a CD or a floppy disk or something like that, and it also came with a cable that you would hook between two computers.
Yes.
And that's how you transfer files between computers. It was like God, what the fuck was that port? It had like 24 pins or whatever. It was either not the parallel one, but the actual DB25 serial. Yeah, the serial port. That's exactly what it is. It
was.
What was it? I bought that software in the box at a garage sale, like in '96 or something like that.
Not PC Sync or PC Transfer. Yeah, that thing was I think it even ran at 112 baud.
Yeah, I don't know what it was called, but God, that makes you feel old. Cause that's how. Because I think that was before. It had to have been before USB.
Absolutely.
Way before USB,
literally
right?
was the old serial port.
Yeah. So like even before USB 1, wow, goodness gracious. They didn't call it USB 1 back then, by the way. They've changed that name multiple times. Nate, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I still technically use floppy disks. I save my bash scripts to just for nostalgia, but also I can't remember the name of it, and I wish I could find one. But I used to have this tower that had 7 CDs in it, and that was what I used to back up my data to. And I thought it was so cool to back up all my data to CDs.
I have a whole bunch of floppy disks, but if someone asked me right now, Matt, you have to read this floppy disk on a computer, I wouldn't be able to do it. I don't have a computer in my house that still has a floppy disk drive. Like they're all just long gone. War Thunder, go ahead.
I was gonna say I do have a USB floppy disk. Unrelated. No, I actually had, and some of you might know what I'm talking about. I had a disk changer set up at that IT office because we had files we had to distribute to like 800 students to for their classes and whatnot. A lot of it was just PowerPoints, video files, basic stuff. So they gave us a crap. That's actually where some of these DVDs came from. They gave us a crap ton of DVDs and a massive disk array that had like 7 or 8 disk drives in it. You stuck one disk in the top and told it to clone, and it would burn 7 DVDs at the same time. That's how we distributed all those files to them. I just sat there for hours on a day and just burned DVDs like crazy.
The things we used to go through were just horrible. Josh, go ahead.
So, I mean, if we're flexing like old hardware that we have, I still have SATA CD CDDRs. I have 3 different specs for DVD burners and readers. I even have a rewriter. I have a Blu-ray burner with LightScribe. If you guys remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was LightScribe plus. And then I have, in terms of floppy, I have USB SATA and the old. I don't think it was IDE. I think it was PITA. Floppy drive, floppy interface. I've also got one that can connect up over eSATA too. I even have a proper serial terminal too,
Nice.
in case I ever need it.
You know, just in case. Nate,
No,
go.
I want one. I want like a VT420 or the 320 at least.
We should just all get Commodores and just be happy with that.
Procom Plus. That seemed to like.
No, I was about to say the other one was called. Another one was called Crosstalk.
Yep.
And of course, there was Procom Plus. And what else was there? There's another one.
Kermit.
Yeah, that was but that was really for serial. Yeah, you could transfer files to it.
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
Nate, go ahead.
All right.
I was
That's
gonna
okay.
say my job has the ultimate backup system. We have this thing called a scanner copier, and it like takes papers and scans it, and then makes more paper, and it like puts little fancy edges on it for you, puts them together, and then you pick it up physically, like transfer it to a file. It's
Nate,
awesome.
there was Rover, and then there was Merlin. Do you remember Merlin? My
Yes, I
friend?
remember Merlin.
Yeah.
Oh, I still need to find a scanner. Thanks for reminding me on that.
Hey, go ahead, Darcy. You've been waiting. Did you hand up earlier?
I missed that. Did you?
Did I? Oh, I don't remember putting it up. I really have much to say. Because I don't think I'm as old as most of you.
Hey, whoa! Hey,
I don't mean to like an insult. I just like all this technology I've never heard about. Like, I don't know. I remember I had one of the Nintendo consoles, and I had like there was like a
back, and then
you just call us all old, man. Yeah, it's just not good.
I'm sorry.
It's
There are
fine.
people born
It's true, man.
after consoles I have.
Hey,
I wish I could I wish I was a bit like born in the 80s or something, because I feel like I did miss out on a lot of, like, I don't know, my childhood was just flash games, like Congregate and all of those flash games, and trying to make them and fail, and I gave up. And it's like, then I had like this like I tried learning C++, and I didn't have any hardware to do it on, so I ended up just reading a textbook. I feel like I never knew anyone that had hardware though. It's like I wish it was like you guys. Like I could I had all this like random hardware that you could just write programs on or figure out NAS, and now it's like everything is just prepackaged. It's like Chrome. It's like Android. It's just there's not much customizability. They sort of hide away the user. And I don't like that direction with software. I think people should be able to get their hands dirty, because otherwise you don't learn how the software works.
We could say something about kids these days and wanting it that way, but who knows? Nate, go ahead.
I was gonna say I just seen on the Facebook Marketplace one of those old HP printers that has the paper that has the holes on the side. That's how you feed it through. Then it like breaks off, and I was thinking, I totally want one, but I do not have a serial port on me right now to connect this thing. But I totally want it.
Okay,
I mean, I have a dot matrix printer.
you can get serial port to like USB dongles. They those things do exist. I'm not sure how good they are.
Yeah, but how do I explain to my wife that it's a good idea to buy the printer plus try to find paper and spend money on that plus trying to buy the extra? Yeah, I just leave it alone.
Smart.
But to Darcy's point, the thing about the bad thing about the 80s and stuff was the cost. The cost of computers back then were just ridiculous.
And it didn't get better for a long time. I mean, people are really. I mean, you can go out now and buy $100 computer, and you know it'll be okay. Like it's not gonna light the world on fire or Josh's desk mat on fire, but it'll do your job. But even when I got my first computer at home, like I'd used computers long before that in school, but when I had my first personal computer, Gateway stores were still a thing, and we went to the Gateway store. And it cost $4,000 for that computer, and it came in 12 or 15 boxes. It was ridiculous. It took the UPS guy 20 minutes to unload everything because I mean, first of all, it was a CRT monitor, and that thing was heavy, and the computer itself was heavy, and it had all this stuff, and it came with probably 3,000 or 4,000 pages of documentation. They just don't do that anymore. If you buy a computer these days, you don't get any documentation. You don't even get a reboot. Half the time, you don't get a reset disk anymore.
No, you don't. No, you can get an 8th gen laptop right now, refurb for around $200.
Well, I just bought this Windows box. It's I always forget the name. It's like an HP Vital, starts with a V or something like that. Anyways, has a NVIDIA 3050. And granted, it was used. I got it for $500, and it had 32 gigabytes of RAM in it. It's nuts. Nate, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's also interesting the fact that you talk about the 80s and the early 90s about the cost of things. And then there was a section between 2006 and 2014 where all that tech was really, really cheap. Now all of a sudden we're in 2024 and all that old tech is started becoming expensive again. It's kind of crazy how it just, you think it's, $5 at the Goodwill would be where it's at, but it's not anymore.
Well, because the nerds among us were buying that stuff up again because retro stuff has become the new hip thing again. I
blame LGR.
Also, it's one of the reasons like vinyl's back again. Like you can go and buy brand if you want Taylor Swift on vinyl, you can do it. I don't know. I mean, I think it would feel. Wouldn't it feel weird?
Why would you?
Just shake it off.
Okay, so some genres actually objectively sound better in vinyl.
No, that's fair.
I don't think
fair.
Taylor Swift does.
I was gonna say I don't know that Taylor Swift is one of those, but maybe it is. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
It would have to depend on how it was recorded. If it was actually done by analog recording, it would sound amazing on a vinyl. But if you're talking about a digital age, probably not.
Well, I mean, okay. So, granted, I was born on the ass end of when vinyl stuff was still around. Most of my childhood was cassette tapes and then eventually CDs and stuff like that. But I had a vinyl player when I was really young, and I don't remember it fondly. The damn thing broke all the damn time. And there was one point my mom told me, if you break the needle on this thing, I'm going to whoop you, boy, because that thing is a pain in the ass to fucking replace. And then I broke it. So I never ended up getting any more vinyl after that. It was cassette tapes. And then cassette tapes are damn things got eaten all the damn time. And in order to rewind it, you got yourself a pencil and started rewinding the damn thing.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of these kids nowadays understand the pain of trying to very safely pull the tape out of your tape deck in your car. Hopefully you find a pencil to rewind it back in.
Oh my goodness. The pain of when you're going down the highway and you want to change your tape out.
or
But I
sorry,
will
or if you start listening to the song and it's warped in one area, then you go back and listen to the song again. You're like, wait, it don't actually sound like that again.
Then technology came, and you remember that little cassette tape that you could get? It had a cord on the outside and it would plug into something and would allow you to play stuff through your stereo with a cassette tape.
Well, hold on, Matt. I actually drove because my dad bought a mid-2000s Buick at one point. It had a fancy cassette tape deck in it because it could automatically flip the tape over for you and then reach the end of the side and would wind it back.
So it could play backwards.
was that a Cadillac
country
or
music?
something?
He said, you guys are forgetting 8-tracks. That's the one thing that 8-track had over cassette.
I had it right next to my CB radio. So,
But you could plug it. You could be driving 70 miles an hour, plug in a new one, never jam.
War Thunder's gonna go get an 8-track tape. One of that.
I guarantee you that's true.
It's gonna go do it.
I have a story to tell. On my absence, I took the teens up in this old Ford van to a conference. My solution was to buy one of those things that you plug into the cigarette lighter that lets you connect via Bluetooth, and then take the little tape with the cable and plug that into the output, and then that way I can Bluetooth my phone, then they'd play through the radio.
Yeah. James, we knew you were going to do that.
More than a feeling, my friend.
James Young left a super chat. I appreciate that. He said the early CD players would skip badly even when walking. Yeah, that was before skip prevention. Like, skip prevention eventually did become pretty damn good. But in those early days, nope, there was no skip prevention.
You relearned how to walk. Avoid that.
You had to become a very smooth walker if you didn't want to have it be very skippy. War Thunder, you had your hand up?
Oh, no, it's fine. I was just going to say about this one. This is actually a functional device. My buddy got this for me for birthday one year. I can't remember which year it was. But he actually had this one rebuilt on the inside. So if I actually had an 8-track player, I could play it. But this is a part of a meme because I love this album so much. I have it in pretty much every way it was ever done. I have it on the original CD, 8-track, the cassette tape, digitally, vinyl, all of it.
That's dedication right there. Nate, go ahead.
I will say, I have several of these things that a lot of people don't even know about. There was a format called HDD or HD DVD. And I thought that was going to be the next big thing, and I invested into it.
Yeah,
and Blu-ray won.
Sorry, Nate.
Yeah, suckers.
You have it on Laserdisc, by the way, War Thunder?
I do not have it on Laserdisc. However, I do have a Laserdisc. It is Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm actually going to take it to my buddy's house who has a Laserdisc player and experienced Laserdisc.
Ladies and gents, goodbye.
Yeah,
all right.
Just let you know, I have an 8-track player and I have a Laserdisc player. We should have a media night.
You guys are gonna have at it. Anyways, we're gonna pop out of here along with Drew. Everyone who watched live, thank you so very much for sticking around with this nerd fest that this came around to. We had a lot of fun. It was very good. All of you guys who joined in on the LUG, of course, thank you so very, very much. Those of you who are watching live, if you want to join, we do this twice a month. One in the early morning, one in the late evening. If you want to find out exact dates, they're always on a Thursday. You can join the Discord server and go to the events little tab there along the side. That'll tell you exactly when the next one's going to be. The next one will be in early August. It'll be on the second, I believe, on the second Thursday. It'll be at 11:15 a.m. Eastern time if you want to join. I don't know what the topic is. We usually choose around a week at a time. We do a poll or whatever, and we choose together. So if you want to join, we have a lot of fun. As you can tell, we never stay on topic, but that's okay, because if we just done backup solutions the whole 2 hours, that would have been it would have got boring.
There we go.
Yeah.
I was explaining my rsync scripts to you. Take hours.
We should have just done. We could have gotten to reading the rsync man page. That would have.
That's a page turner right there, man.
It is. Anyways, thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.
Take care. Thanks, man. Thanks, everybody.